coffee and change my wardrobe.
Did we lose Mark?
He should be back. I'll keep an eye out and listen for the pop. That sounded weird. Okay, so anybody who is checking us out now, I just closed my YouTube, so I assume that we're live.
We are live. 15 seconds.
Oh my gosh! All right. Well, so yes, this is the Suicide Squad. I'm back here with Earth's Mightiest critics. It's been a long time since we were all together. At least like 5 minutes. Yeah. For those of you who are just tuning in or tuning in later, we just got done doing a live stream about What If, kicking off our latest weekly series, What If. We talked about What If, and now we're going to talk about the Suicide Squad, which came out last weekend and did not so great according to a lot of the estimates. But again, this is the new COVID era of movie tabulation. So it's hard to tell what's spin. Like, is $26.5 million really terrible? Or did you make up a lot of it with the HBO Max subscriptions? I don't know. Don, you look like you've got some ideas on that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this coming weekend. I think with Don't Breathe 2. David and I, we went to see Suicide Squad together, and that was a big trailer that was playing with Don't Breathe 2. I didn't see Don't Breathe 1. Anyone know if that's worthwhile?
Oh, it is.
I saw Don't Breathe, yeah.
It's worth it.
In theater, you might die unless you have a mask. Right.
Don't breathe 2, Delta.
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought it'd be Don't Breathe 4. Yeah.
Actually, Mark, yes, I'm in my Batman shirt. You got the cap on. You're representing. Also, you've got your appropriate. You've got the Jared Leto from the better of the two Suicide Squad movies.
You got
I even took down my 1989 Batman teaser poster, the original.
Oh my God!
For this.
Yeah.
So, there you go. There you go. And
just like he got that from a market on Corto Maltese. They'll give it to him for all his photojournalistic work.
And I got my Superman 2 laser etched promotional vinyl up there as well. So.
Are you wearing your DC underwear? Don't answer that, and please don't.
Underuse.
Yes, Underuse. Wrong universe,
Underuse.
David. But
I have R2D2 on tonight. So.
What? Yeah, no.
What?
The R2D2 Underuse.
Annie, do you know what? I don't mean to sound this insulting, but do you know what Underuse are?
Yes.
I hope.
Okay,
Should I
good.
say no? Should I just say no and just...
No, I don't want to have to explain it. I just didn't want you to be like, what the hell are they talking about Underuse?
Can you explain it to me? Because I've never heard that term before.
Ah, boy.
Oh.
See what you did?
No, I just...
Except for that one scene with John Cena, then maybe that'll clarify it.
That's tidy whiteys.
Those are tidy whiteys.
True.
That's different than
wow.
Yeah, Underuse are like
that different.
So
patterny
No, I got
watternies.
you.
So back in the day, back in the 70s, they had Underuse.
So you're really going to mansplain this, David?
Dress up, yeah. Hey, I'm pretty sure she wasn't around then.
Oh wait, hold on.
I will take that one. I will take that.
I'll also, because here you go. There we go. So,
Is that out?
Oh, yeah, it's out. That's out.
Did that
That's a
just
good
come
looking
out?
comic right
Came
there.
out
it was literally
Yeah.
in my pull folder today. I went in and I only got 2 things in my pull folder because that's all I can afford because I'm old.
They're
but,
$4 comics, my friend. That's a lot.
And they're still comics.
Yeah.
But it's
I'll
that
wait
and
for
Legend
the
of the
trailer,
Dark Knight.
man.
So we were downtown and I just happened to pop by the comic book store. I was like, you don't happen to have anything in my pull folder for me, which felt really good to say after like 20 years. And they're like, why, we do. And the guy literally pulled out, he's a good friend of mine. He pulled out the Batman 89 and I literally squeed and my wife just looked at me and she's like, really? And I'm like, what? It's Batman 89.
Yep.
She's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really.
The R2D2 just
Well,
don't short circuit down there, buddy. Okay.
No.
Hey, here's the thing, Mark, about that situation. Both reactions are valid.
Yeah. Thank you.
But no, I'm
Yes, they
excited
are.
now because I'll have that waiting in my pull box. As some of you know, I recently got back into reading comics, so yeah, I'll be reading that probably this weekend when I go out to take my son to get Pokemon cards. That's how we spend our Sundays.
Is that still a thing?
Oh.
Yes, it is.
I
Yeah.
used to collect Pokemon cards when I was, maybe 15 years ago. And I had this huge tin. Don't ask me how I played the game. I know how I didn't play the game. I just thought they were neat and I loved collecting them. And my sister's friend was also really into them. And I remember my mom was like, hey, Annie has a bunch of these things. She doesn't use them. Do you want them? I had like 200 Pokemon cards gone.
Oh no!
Wow. I was devastated. I was devastated.
Say, Mom, I want a divorce.
Yeah.
Well, that's
why I excommunicated myself from the Banks family altogether.
No kidding.
Well, that's kind of appropriate to what we're talking about tonight with comics and comic related movies, because those are the horror stories you'd hear all the time from kids in the 50s and 60s who had all these classic comics, and their mom would go in and like clean out the room or whatever, and just throw out all these old raggy comics. They're not really worth anything and make you illiterate, and then of course they turn out to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The paradox is, had those comics not been thrown in the trash, they would not be worth all of that money all those years later.
This is true.
Found that out in the 90s.
Welcome to the 90s. Correct.
Yeah, right.
You mean just like all those people,
to
all those people that bought a shit ton of, a crap ton of Star Wars figures because, these are going to be valuable in 20 years, not realizing they've mass produced Star Wars figures. So no, they're not going to be worth $20, $30, $50 in the future. They're still going to be worth probably even less.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's the collector's nightmare, at which I wake up in sweats.
That's why I read them.
It's not sweatpants.
I just don't care to keep them nice and just get your enjoyment out of them and not a collector's enjoyment out of it.
Well, but here's the problem, Don. I understand where you're coming from, but I also can't do it. Like I still, whenever I'm reading comics, it's like not like white gloves, but still, yeah.
Okay.
There you go, Suicide Squad, go Joker, or get Joker,
Get Joker.
Shorty. Okay, so. The Joker is absent from the movie that we're talking about tonight, except I think he's mentioned. Yes. The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. This is a sequel. People have called it a soft reboot, whatever, to the 2017 David Ayer film.
2016 David Ayer.
Yeah, there's a year that a lot of awful things happened, but Suicide Squad was definitely up there. That was a movie I remember watching and talking to you about, David, immediately after, and just flabbergasted at what I'd just seen. I hate to say it. I'm going to jump in.
Do it.
I usually wait for the end, but I will just say,
go on in. The water's great.
The Suicide Squad. And I'm going to get this out of the way because, as I mentioned to David, I think it was after we got out of the screening, I was going to have a lot of fun tonight because I'm going to kick up my heels. Not really because I'm on one of those exercise balls. If I do that, I will fall and break something. But I'm going to kick up my figurative heels and let the rest of the Earth's Mightiest critics talk to me about why they love the Suicide Squad, because this was honestly one of the most miserable, depressing movie-going experiences I've had in quite a while.
And not just because I was next to you.
I didn't want to say anything.
You didn't like it?
It sounds like when I watched Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience.
It's like somebody killed Annie's dog.
Yeah.
I'm heartbroken over
That's why you got to go first, Ian.
I loved it.
Well, no, if I'm gonna limit it.
We're gonna have to go Ian then Annie.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I don't want to.
So
I don't want any of us to be here for 6 hours, so I'm going to limit my comments.
Why are you echoing?
Someone's echoing.
Yeah, there's an echo.
Echo. Mom.
We going there?
What is?
It's not me.
The Phantom Zone.
That's so weird. Oh my gosh.
Start circling lights.
I feel like Ian's in my head. This is trippy.
Ian's in my head. Suddenly, I hate Suicide.
Are we better?
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
WB shut off his mic. They're like, no.
Hey, at least someone's talking about this movie, and after the weekend it had, it needs all the help it can get. No, here the big problem I have, and I'm mixed on James Gunn. I loved the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I kind of liked the first one. I liked the idea of Slither more than I liked it in practice. I hated Super. I respect him as a filmmaker. I just don't always like the way that the movies come out. And I feel like this movie was James Gunn to the max, and I think a lot of people love that, and that's fine. But it really solidified to me that James Gunn is sort of like the R-rated version of Joss Whedon, and I'm so over that style of like everything is knowing and kitschy and goofy. And the problem is, I predicted everything that was going to happen in this movie down to lines of dialogue, and for 2.5 hours, that's rough for me. And there were several times when I just wanted to get up and leave because I didn't feel like I was going to miss anything. Now, that's not to say that there weren't parts that I would have enjoyed in different hands. I think some of the performances were really good. I think a lot of my problems come down to the script and trying to find a tone that works. And there was stuff in here that was played for laughs and played for goofiness that I thought was too dark to be funny. Here's a good example. The scene where Idris Elba literally standing in for Will Smith's character from the first movie. Yes, he's the black mercenary guy who is sent to this prison for doing, stuff against superheroes. He's got a messed up relationship with his daughter, and he's reluctantly dragged onto this team. They couldn't get Will Smith. They settled for Idris Elba. When I say settled, I mean just in terms of like trying to get an actor. He's a great actor. But the problem is, in this movie, it's with a lot of these characters, they're all supposed to be these criminals who are sent to this special prison, and then they're brought out for these covert government missions. They're all supposed to be maniacs and psychopaths. This film turned these guys into the Guardians of the Galaxy. At no point did I sense any danger. I knew that they were all going to have redemption arcs. No one was going to be truly evil. Even John Cena, who turns out to be kind of heel. And before I go any further, I should probably put on this banner. Yes. Even that, at the very end of the movie, the post-credit sequence, he survives. Why? I would have been, if Joel Kinnaman had been the one to have been found in the rubble, even with the pierced heart, I would have stood up and cheered, because like with a lot of the good in this movie, it was just kind of sapped out in favor of this weird darkness. That whole sequence where the Suicide Squad goes into this, what they think is an enemy camp, and just starts murdering people. And it's this kind of fun, like interplay of like, oh, I can kill people more efficiently than you. And there's just all this gore and carnage. And then it turns out those are the rebels, the freedom fighters, the good guys. I'm like, I was already thinking these are, people that you're taking out in a South American country that we've already established as being lorded over by the United States, and they've kind of got these weird political factions going on. So it's not like Hydra where there are literal Nazis. These are poor people who are freedom fighters for their own, causes and whatever. So I don't get off on making a joke of how creatively you can kill people who are struggling for their lives. On top of that, and I know this is not something they could have known when they were making this movie, but at the end, when Alice Braga breaks into the head of the office of El Presidente and declares with her band of freedom fighters, we're taking over the government, everyone's supposed to stand up and cheer. I'm like, how do these people feel about the January 6th insurrection, I wonder? Also, there's this weird also political line of like, well, the American government got together with this other kind of puppet government and engineered this thing that, if it got out, could destroy the entire world. Again, not something they could have known when they made this in 2019 or whatever, but watching it today, I'm like, I don't need this nonsense in my life in the context of a goofy comic book movie. So that's me. I'm officially going to stop and let you guys tell me about what you loved about the Suicide Squad. Again, much like with last episode, deafening silence. I live for this. Thank you.
I'm not a big DC fan, so I couldn't say.
I think Annie was next.
Yes.
I was waiting.
I'm about to go off because
do it.
I love the Suicide Squad. I went in with, again, I'm like Don. I have no expectations. I make sure I don't know anything. I go in blind. I do know that I really like James Gunn. I think that he is quirky and creative, and he really likes to play with the audiovisual aspects of these brutal killings and beheadings and maulings and manglings and what have you. I was hooked. I really liked it. I really did end up adoring how they shone a spotlight on Ratcatcher 2 and Polka Dot Man.
Mhm.
I thought that was really nice instead of making it the Harley Quinn show or the Peacemaker show, which he's getting. Or, this is Idris Elba, and here he is. He's not in Cats this time. Congratulations. But
At least the butthole cut.
Yeah, jeez. No. But I just had a really good time with this one. And I again, it's much like Guardians of the Galaxy, where you really know Starro's not a real threat. Peter Capaldi's going to be there, and he's bald, and he's pissed off, and that's every role that he has ever. And, I was for the longest time, I expected Taika Waititi to be Starro. I thought he was going to, speak. I thought
that would have been bad.
Kaiju was going to, start talking to me. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, when am I going to hear Taika speak? When is this going to happen? And then there was that really small emotional little bit, and I maybe cried at 4 a.m. while watching the Suicide Squad. But
4 a.m. Wow.
She's on Ian's schedule.
Yeah. Well, no, because by the time she got to that scene, she would have started at 2. That's way beyond my bedtime.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, no, I thought, of course it's juvenile and it's immature and it's every 14-year-old boy's dream come true, because you get to see Pete Davidson's entire face go off.
Worth it.
After he's funny though. He's funny. Yeah. I like him in this role.
He was barely in it though.
He was barely in it, and I wish we saw more of him, but we saw just enough. Where I think if you kept him in it for longer, you go, okay, he's making a joke about Weasel again. He's making a joke about TJK again. He's making these same jokes again, which is what he's been doing on Saturday Night Live for the last 10 years, maybe. I don't know. But of course, it was overkill, and I can definitely admit to that, where it kind of drains that emotional value that is there, where you kind of go, okay, what makes a hero a hero? Oh, that guy just got split in half, and you can see every organ. How do I walk away feeling? Do I need a shower, or do I need to talk to a therapist? Right? But
or do you talk to a therapist in the shower?
That too. Depends on what type of therapy you're going for.
Right.
Waterproof phone, man.
Mm-hmm. It's like the sessions, right?
Mark, you've done that too many times in your life.
I'm not confirm or deny. I just say, well, they make waterproof phones. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like David Dashmalkian, I think was great as Polka Dot Man. Yeah. The problem is they didn't do anything with Polka Dot Man beyond the premise. He can shoot these polka dots. I thought his introduction before they reveal what the polka dots do. There's this great body horror stuff of him in the woods. And it's night, and they're kind of seeping out of his skin, and there's some mystery to it. But then once they have that bit where he, there's kind of an aside where he says, sorry, I just got a little pop up on my computer. There's an aside where he mentions that all he sees when he sees people or when he sees bad guys is his mother. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, there's going to be a POV shot where we see the Suicide Squad as the mother. And sure enough, we get it. And then we get it again. And we get it again. And it's like, oh, look, it's Starro, but it's going to be a giant version of his mom. Again, the imagination, you introduce it. It's a hack premise to begin with, but they don't do anything with it. They could have just let it go and left us thinking, imagining that when he's blowing these people away, he's seeing his mom. That's enough for me. Maybe for comic book movie audiences, they need that. I know it's a visual medium and everything, but it's sort of indicative. Every gag in this movie, it's played out to the nth degree. And honestly, most of these jokes I've seen for the last 20 years of watching comic book movies.
Well, you could say that about every comic book film, yet you love,
Correct.
I think Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2 did a lot in terms of themes. They had they had the heavy and the light. Yeah. Yes, and they had the comedy and the emotion, and my dad's a planet, and he's a god that wants to consume the universe. There's some really heavy, cool stuff going on there, and there's no way in hell that I could have imagined Chris Pratt transforming into Pac-Man to fight, a giant Kurt Russell. So that's the thing, is it's cliche to have fantastical elements in a comic book movie, but what those elements are does not have to be a cliche.
Well, I think Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna stop. No, I won't say anything this whole episode. You guys go ahead.
No, you're the dude. You're here. You are the DC guy. This is a DC movie.
Look,
we need you.
here's the thing with it. I think they do a lot with the Polka Dot Man. You get a running theme in here. Now, it's buried beneath the gore and it's buried beneath the tropes and the exaggerated dark humor. But there is an underlying theme of family going throughout this entire film from Idris Elba and his problem with his kid to
which we saw in the last movie with Will Smith. Yes.
How many we've seen Spider-Man? How many times? How many heroes?
Too many times.
Yes, this is my exact point. The fact
No
that
more
we've seen it
things.
100 times is not an excuse to see it again and
No,
say, but we've
it
seen this
doesn't
100 times.
But it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad if you are entertained by it, and I was. But there's an underlying theme here of family all through this. You get first him, Polka Dot Man. Yeah, they don't necessarily. You say they don't do anything with his mom. We find out that his mom experimented the hell on him and the rest of his family through Star Labs, which if you're a DC folk and you're connected with the Flash, we've got nothing but goody two-shoes Flash from the CW show. Now we're finding out Star Lab people are actually doing experiments on family, and you're like, holy crap. Here we have a guy who was affected by experiments done on people at Star Labs that makes you start to question Star Labs.
Put that in the movie or else it doesn't really count because I don't watch The Flash.
Okay, fine. Okay. But you still have that moment where he talks about how he was traumatized by his mom. Ratcatcher was traumatized by the loss of her father, who was a druggie, who still loved her and gave her some very great bits of worldly knowledge and looking at even the lowest animal as being, royal. There's that family element. Idris Elba's character, he had a family element going on as well. You've got a theme of family running through here.
Agreed.
It gets buried through all of this, but you still have that theme running through this film.
Right, but it's the same. It's the same that we've seen. It's the same family stuff that we've seen in both of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Okay, but does that necessarily make it bad? That's
yes,
where I'm going
because
at.
of the way it's handled here versus the way it was handled in the Guardians films. In here, I agree. You've got the story with the Polka Dot Man, which is told through dialogue, and I will give Gunn credit here. We don't have a flashback to see, this mom experimenting on the kids. It's all told through dialogue, and it's chilling stuff. But they drop that nugget in the middle of the movie, and the rest of it is just gags about him seeing his mom. And at the end, his big finale, I'm a superhero. And I'm like, okay, here's where he gets crushed by the giant tentacle.
Well,
and sure enough, I'm a superhero. And then he gets crushed by the giant tentacle. If you're going to introduce this stuff, the way that Gunn is able to do in the Guardians films, introduce it and have it actually mean something instead of just, I guess that's depth because they raised it once and now the rest is just dumb gags.
But the Suicide Squad isn't that type of film.
I understand, and that's why it's not as good as the Guardians film.
For you, because it's not what you're looking for in a film, and I totally get that. You and I have had many debates over the 5, Freddy Got Fingered. You love it. You get the humor. I've watched it 2.5 times and I still don't get it. Whereas the humor and stuff in Suicide Squad, my taste, Ian, they run low. Okay. I love trauma. I love Gunn's trauma years. I love that type of humor, that gonzo stuff. I had a blast with this, not necessarily because I was thinking outside of the box going, oh man, those people are poor people or whatnot. I'm watching a Suicide Squad film with a guy whose arms can detach and go after and slap people. I'm watching a film that has a literal talking anthropomorphic shark. At that point,
Killer Croc. Sorry, Killer Croc.
Killer Croc is Groot. At that point, though, I separate the reality and just look at this in its own microcosm of the universe and the tone that it's in. I totally get it. It's the same debate you and I had, though, Ian. Yeah. And that's why I'm surprised you still have me on your shows. Because him and I had that debate about Godzilla. We talked about Godzilla, how he's like, oh, there's the carnage and massive buildings dying, people dying. I'm like, it's a Godzilla film. It's not meant for you to think beyond that. Suicide Squad is in its own contained world. We haven't gotten this in not either DC or even, you got some of it in Deadpool, but not to this extreme. This is in its own little bubble, okay, as far as the story and the type of film it is. If you look at it, Iron Man is its own type of theme of stories. Thor is its own type of theme of stories with more mythology and stuff. This one, James Gunn's Suicide Squad, is just gonzo. You've got villains trying to be heroes, and they know they're villains. And, the only one who's kind of redeeming out of all of this, and as right she should be, the way she's set up, is Ratcatcher 2, because we learn just how horrible Waller is and Argus is by taking her only because she did a theft and she could control rats. And so they took her not because of what she did, but what she's able to do. And Argus saw that. So this throws out a whole bunch of ideas of just how undermining this government movement is in, versus what we may have gotten in Marvel where, we're, all the good heroes. And, if we are bad guys, they're Hydra. In this one, it's a little more muddied. And I'm just saying that's what they're going for. I totally get, Ian, that you didn't like different strokes for different folks. But for me, I love James Gunn. I love Tromeo and Juliet. So I'm sitting here going, this is if Troma made a superhero film. And I was just,
Well, I want to go back to that Troma. I just want to put a pin in this because I've heard this a lot with the discussion around this film. It's like you can totally see James Gunn's Troma roots. I can't. If I had not known that James Gunn had done Troma, I would not see a Troma stamp anywhere here except for the Lloyd Kaufman cameo. I've seen all the gags in this. I've seen the gore. I've seen the bit where the blade goes through his head and his top of his head slowly slides off in a bad CGI, death scene. I get it. I just feel like that's more like marketing talk.
I'll borrow a word from Mark to kind of help reinforce. And he said the word streak. And, you don't need fissures and canyons and hardcore bedrock layers of character when you're doing a Suicide Squad movie. Streaks are plenty. Streaks can paint a very good picture. Streaks can add color where other things lack. And all sometimes you need is a streak. Now, this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes and a bit of 8 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag where they go a little long, but it's made with, and I'm going to go with where Mark is at. It's made with streaks instead of strokes.
There's streaks all over this movie. I'll give you that.
I know.
He's talking about the Underuse.
Yeah.
No, but no, it's an ensemble piece where you're definitely playing the hot potato of who's your alpha male or who's your your lead this and your lead that, and everybody gets their little chapter and place to shine. And when you have that many characters all blended in together and you're throwing all this stuff around, streaks are all you need. And that's why this was plenty and this was enough. And anything thicker than that, you discount another character here, another character there. Is it because you're doing the ragtag hodgepodge thing, and you're gonna make it with ragtag hodgepodge ideals. And that's good enough for me. I'm not expecting Dostoevsky character studies here in Suicide Squad.
Well, but you see, that's the thing, is you're writing off the premise before you go into the movie. The Suicide Squad has been around in comics for years.
Well,
you don't get long-lasting comic series with streaks. That. And I want to see some indication watching this movie of what people saw in the Suicide Squad beyond just like Joker and Harley Quinn and a bunch of bad guys to bring him to the screen and try and make a franchise out of it.
No, where this movie needs to improve going forward, if they're going to keep this going, and box office wise, they're probably not. You can't keep making this same movie now twice and then thrice. Like if you're going to do the first 15 minutes, let's go pluck another batch of prisoners, and hey, Rick Flag, come run the show a little bit, and then Amanda Waller just bosses everybody around. If you do that for a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time, and it's not a series, you're trying to squeak 2 hour movies out of that. Yes, that is repetitive where streaks are not enough. But for a soft sequel of spinning the deck and amping up what they want to amp up for the fun factor and gore factor, we can stay streaks. But you're right, you can't stay this way much longer. And maybe that's where this Peacemaker show comes in. I don't know, but Mike, where were you going?
Well, the thing is, we saw what they did with the fun. I know we should look at it on its own merits, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, look at the train wreck. That was the first one. And if you look at the first one, it's like they tried taking those characters and all that stuff so seriously. And look what happened, So now we have this one, and I agree with you. Like it's a very surface level. The mom thing, I was laughing my butt off during it. Like, yeah, when
Me
they cut
too.
to the CGI mom, I'm like, okay, I get the joke. Don't tell the same joke 80 times, you know. But with that said, it won me over. I honestly didn't know what to think of this when walking in, because before it even came out, they said, oh, you know, this guy from Team Marvel is going to come to Team DC to direct a film.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, didn't we get that with Joss Whedon the last time that happened? This is going to work out. But thank God it did. They didn't, you know, try to have some ulterior motive like Whedon did. And this one, the jokes worked. Yes, it's the same jokes we see a million times, but the timing in it worked. And that's why
the
they were
actors
funny.
doing it too.
Yeah, it's seeing John Cena as a guy who's the peacekeeper going around and brutally chopping people up like they're slabs of meat. It's funny. The polka dot man thing is funny, and it's like if for a movie where you attach it, this is why you attach an R rating to something, because it's like watching Goodfellas without the language or Private Ryan without the violence. It doesn't have the same impact without that. Here they added all the shallow stuff they wanted to, and you know what? I don't care if it's shallow. I wish the movie was a little shorter, but it won me over. And if it's going to win casuals over, that's kind of the idea in the end. Now the box office numbers, I don't know what that really resembles, especially with COVID and, you know, people watching it from streaming at home and all that. So we'll see if it's enough to raise it to a sequel, and if it's not, I'm honestly kind of fine with that. But you know, we'll see. But for one movie, it's the same brand of humor, but the timing of each joke, it works a little more, and there's a little bit, you know, like we said earlier, there's you get to know about Ratcatcher a little bit. You even feel a little bit for Polka Dot Man, but we don't want to go too far into that. You know, you can do that with the sequel. You can dive a little more into it.
Well, with one of them anyway.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get them anyways, and I'm fine with that. So for what they did with this one-off, you know, for me, job well done. I was surprised how much I liked it. And I was happy. I liked it as much as because I said that big 90-some% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going, oh boy, I'm not going to like this now, you know, but no, I still did.
Contrarian to the end, Mike. David, what do you think? I know we didn't talk really about this at all the other night when we got out of the movie, except that you said you were kind of on the fence. But in a couple of days since then, which are you still on the fence? Are you leaning one way or the other?
Look, the bar was low after the 2016 attempt. So yeah, I liked it slightly better than Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad was slightly better, yes. I didn't tell you, but that was my second time seeing it with you. I had watched it on HBO Max. Yeah. And nice. like most people are doing, they're watching it like 3 times in a row and just, you know, ad nauseum. Yeah, people are just, that's why it's losing money. Anyway. So I get everything that you're saying, Ian. There's definitely still some things that I liked about it, despite its repetitiveness towards some other James Gunn movies and some other just, you know, formulas.
Yeah.
I wished it would have been, you know, coming from a comics background, I know the potential that this could be. You know, and the whole idea of Suicide Squad when it came out in the late 80s was like, here's this group of, you know, kind of like ragtag, like pretty much terrible people who've been spending most of their time in recent years incarcerated, and they're getting pulled out for a mission. How are they going to react to that? How are they going to behave together? We get some of that stuff, but it's all just for fun. You know, it's all for laughs. You know, Pete Davidson yucking it up, saying, "Am I next to a werewolf? What is this?" It's like, come on. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I guess I appreciated it a little bit more when David Ayer was just kind of like grounding it with a little bit more realism. Yes, it's a comic book movie. Why do you want realism? Well, ask Christopher Nolan. But I think you knew what you were getting in store for with James Gunn. It's going to be quirky. It's going to be out there. It's going to be jokes, a lot of jokes, especially with this the way it opened. And the different chapters with the titles and the letters and stuff. Sure, creative once, twice, good. After a while, repetitive. But that's like with most of the jokes here. Where I will defend the movie, and I wish there was more of this, is there was some actually really creative and beautiful scenes in the movie. Granted, maybe 2 or 3, but there's still, I'll give them credit. And I really enjoyed kind of the, granted, I don't need to see these characters humanized because when you do humanize these characters, it's repetitive because, like Ian said, you're just using the same Deadshot story for Bloodsport. I get it. Okay, fine. But I don't need them humanized because they're supposed to be villains. They're supposed to be bad people anyway. Like that whole FU battle when he was seeing his daughter in prison. I'm like, oh, there we go. This is a despicable character. He's awful to his daughter. Let's maintain that. I don't want to see any growth. I don't want to see him become a good leader. I want to see him just stay bad. That would be great. I don't want to see. He keeps on denying there's no good in him. Okay, whatever. Well, what are we going to find out later on? Oh, I guess there is some good in him. I don't know. I mean, I would have rather them found a way at the end to just break their way back into Argus and put a bullet in Waller's head. Yeah. That would have been great. Just to have some kind of like, there's the final FU and there's the big shot, whatever. Okay, so the beautiful moments I guess I mentioned is I really enjoyed, like, yes, it's kind of a one-off moment, but when and it doesn't really last long because of where it leads, but that whole moment in that I don't know why an aquarium is in Jotunheim Tower, but whatever. I like that. I don't know why I like that scene. Maybe it was just the way it was filmed and how it was just kind of like a nice break for what do they call him? Nanawe? Nanawe, killer shark, I'll call him. Or where he's just kind of going off. He's lured by the reflection of the water and the lights, and he sees these cute little characters. And of course, it's James Gunn movie. They're not going to be cute little characters for long, whatever. But I don't know. I liked that. It was part of the visuals and the music and everything. The other one I liked was I don't know, for some reason, it's just the absurdity of it, of when Harley Quinn uses the javelin at the end and goes through the eyeball, and that was a wonderful scene inside of Starro. Yeah, when she's inside there and there's just you don't know what's going to be inside there. It's just, I'm sure she didn't either. But then the rats come in and start chewing up everything. It's just this weird. It was beautiful for a moment, and then it got really gross. And, so I like that. And sure, there's small moments. I like Des Malchin's performance. Ratcatcher 2 is the default heart of the group. Okay, but that was predicted. There wasn't a huge surprise there. None of these characters are really surprising. Is it great to see some of these actors portray these characters? Sure. I just wish there was a little bit more to go on. If Joel Kinnaman's going to come back as Rick Flag, give him something different or better to do. Right.
They did. They loosened him up and made him hey guys, come on now. He's the assistant basketball coach. Well,
that was his part. That was his part in the first movie. He was babysitting these kids, and they got separated.
But he was the hard ass who had no wavelength of bend.
And you talk about James Gunn cherry picking all these like weird fringe characters from DC, only to just kill them in the first 10 minutes. Oh, that's funny. That's really funny. Okay.
Can we kill some more?
The detachable kid, the TDK. Yeah. Well, it's much better than his original name was Arm Fall Off Boy. That's awful. Okay. But Nathan Fillion's just signing up because he's friends with James Gunn. Michael Rooker, he's friends with James Gunn. I get it. You get your friends to play in the sandbox. It's fun. It's funny.
It's called Quentin Tarantino movies. We've seen all that done
every filmmaker.
Sure, I get it. I understand. Scorsese and
Tarantino actually writes characters for the people that he invites back. I mean, these are just all the time.
So what's my role? Oh, we're just gonna have you. We're gonna blow your face off. It's gonna be great. Okay, cool. I'm in. Sure. But there's just to have these characters and just kind of waste them and make them just for laughs, show up for laughs. Okay, fine. But there's just so much more that could have been done. I think get meta and say, wait, you're just gonna waste us, or something. I don't know. I think they're just like the Harley Quinn animated series is fantastic. It's very clever and creative and hilarious, especially Killer Shark. Here, he's just dumbed down and stupid and wasted. The Killer Shark in the animated series is hilarious. But they sign up Stallone. Killer Croc in the first movie had more personality. I did like the reference to Killer Croc in this movie because it's just a bunch of orange Crocs being worn by the prisoners. That's pretty funny. Gunn's got all these little Easter eggs. You got his brother not only playing Weasel, but also playing Calendar Man from The Long Halloween. Clever, fun, but what is that necessarily going to lead to? Who knows? The whole coda with Weasel at the end. It's just another thing that just tack on some laughs. We kind of knew that wasn't going to be the end of Weasel, but
the two things that I didn't like about the film the most was the tacked on stuff, was the Weasel at the end, which wasn't needed. I will fully admit. And yes, you see the background, and I can still be critical of it. The Weasel ending, the way this film ended with the after credits is what bugs me with Marvel films. With the later phase Marvel films was you knew it was coming. And after seeing John Cena's Peacemaker, I'm going, how are you going to do a series on this character?
Well, we'll show you.
I know they're going to show us. But then, the fact that our end credit sequence was him, the fact that he survived, you saw that coming. It's like what I mentioned before at the end of one of the Spider-Man films, you're getting actually an X-Men trailer. That was your after credit sequence. That was what this was like. And don't hate me, but it's similar to with Black Widow, with when you had the character from the TV show up suddenly in the after credit sequence to set up. I don't mind it. It didn't make me not like the film, but at the same time, I feel like it's wasted. You could have did something else there, or to just not do it at all. This film is so gonzo. You didn't need the after credit sequence.
No, you didn't.
I think that's an ex-Marvel director trolling Marvel fans.
Right. It is.
Let's set up the sequel.
You could have saved that end credit and opened up Peacemaker series with that.
Exactly. That would have been a great teaser or stinger before the credits opening of the first episode of Peacemaker. You're like, holy crap.
Wait,
okay.
You guys keep talking about this series. Are they doing a Peacemaker series?
Yeah, it's coming on HBO Max.
Yeah.
The Peacemaker series has been confirmed. It'll be an HBO
Next
Max
year.
original.
That's milking a joke to death.
My only.
It'll be in January 22.
Wow.
So it's almost.
That's only a few months away.
And I know that Cena and Gunn are trying to have HBO Max order a second season.
Wow.
So the first season's done, so it's coming out, and all right. Well, I guess
It'll be out in January.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. I'm not too. In all honesty, while I like John Cena and the Peacemaker, he was the character that I would have not cared to see a sequel on because we ran his course on here. He served his purpose in this. I will say, for the defense of the characters at the very beginning of this opening, one, he puts in the joke in there that everybody hated about Boomerang getting it at the opening 15 minutes. I think at almost the exact same spot he does here. But within the context of the film, if you see what the purpose of this crew was, why they were put together, it's the reason why we have the ridiculous, probably, even the more dislikable characters than the second squad is. These guys are supposed to be. So Amanda Waller picked just the refuse, for lack of a better term, from most of the squad. And then
real
you throw Savant,
expendables.
real expendables, because these guys really served and they proved it. They really served no viable purpose. They were only in the prison because they were super villains, or they were captured by the superheroes, and that's why they're there. So these were the true expendables, and you had Savant in there being the smartest one of the group, and he's the only one I would have liked to see survive. I understand what they were going for. He was playing the angle too, though, of the war picture of, you kind of had the Finn moment in this film, in this opening, but the reason these characters they picked were because they were supposed to be expendable. We don't care. They're the gimmick, they're the one shot, they're the one joke, but at the same time, they were the expendable. And I was concerned when we were first opening. I'm like, okay, so eventually we're going to drop in the second squad. And no, we find out they're already on the beach, so I get that you're like, boy, I wish we would have seen more of some of these actors. But at the same time, the characters they were playing are probably some of the most ridiculous rogues gallery that they had in the prison. So that's why Amanda Waller picked them, just because, whatever. So there is that. And so that's where I'll defend that part. And yeah, it's the name dropping, of course. But I mean, if you watch enough indie horror films like I do, name dropping and stunt casting is a standard. So for me, I guess it didn't surprise me as much that some of these guys were in one scene, because I expected it as much. I'm like, there's no way you can maintain this many characters.
And it's a comic movie. They stunt cast just as much.
I know people who just want to see this because, Pete Davidson's in it, isn't he? I'm like, yeah, go ahead and watch it.
Right. And they might end up finding the rest of the film entertaining. One thing,
guys, I just want to pop in a reminder. John Malkovich was in one of the Transformers sequels.
Yes, I know.
And
Leonard Nimoy literally said his same freaking lines from Star Trek 2 in one of the Transformer movies. Okay, exactly, because he got paid some serious bank for it. But I'm literally watching that scene, and he's making this. I'm like, I've heard these lines before, said by Spock before. Why am I? Oh yeah. But I will just defend that, and those are supposed to be expendable characters. Where you make up for it is the fact that you had the second squad, the actual people you're supposed to follow landing the beach. And I did like the title thing only because it took me back to some of the horror comics that I had, to where you would usually have the environment doing the title. And I get it's a gimmick that was overplayed. It didn't bug me. I thought they did it well, but I totally get how they overused that as well. I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk a lot about
it. We're here to talk about this. Fine.
I'm going to say right now, out of the 3 instances we've had for Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, for as much as many people hate her, I think she was the best written in this film that we've seen her in, because of how she was handled. And while she still had the same personality for the most part, she's grown, because this is supposed to be after Birds of Prey. She's grown. I liked how she was handled. Namely, I was concerned when they were doing the she got captured scene and she was getting tortured, and it was like she could handle it, and you're like, holy crap, the Joker was an abusive relationship. By the way, folks, those memes of I'd love to have a relationship and you show Harley and Joker together, quit that. quit that, okay?
That's gross.
That's not, but in this one, where you could see it easily go to the damsel in distress being rescued by the team, it's not. They've got this planned out, and she just rescues herself in a wonderful scene to where she's killing guys and soon flowers are flying. I loved that whole visuals of that, because you're getting her perspective, her POV. Plus, let's not ignore the fact she grabbed Boots before she... There's a lot of just little elements that they have in here. Or before that, we've got the spoilers up. When she offs the president guy, you easily could have had some dialogue to where she said, whatever. She has the exposition after she shoots him. In other films, you might have that exposition about the red flags before she shoots them. No, he turns around and she just bang. I mean... So as much as people were bugged by Harley Quinn, it didn't end up being the full Harley Quinn show. But at the same time, she got her scene, and I think she was better written here than in the last 2 films that we got and that made me happy that she got that to where she was still Harley, but he gave her at least a little bit more, and you can tell Margot Robbie loves this character.
Of course.
I don't know what Annie thought, though. I'm a guy, so I don't know what Annie thought of Harley Quinn in this.
I was just about to throw in my 2 cents.
Please.
Margot actually performed that stunt herself.
I know, with the foot.
That was all
And
her contortionist act, taking the key from her toes up to the lock, and then dismounting from the handcuffs. That was completely her. I think it's interesting to see the character development of Harley Quinn throughout the DCEU, just because we see it from Ayer's gaze, which nobody should ever see that again. No. Don't release the Ayer cut, because I think it's going to take that and elevate it awfully. Because you have her boobs off her ribs, and then her waist is impossibly small, and she's just there to look nice, and her ass is in every frame. And I'm like, why am I watching this? Come on, this isn't for, well, but you know what I mean. But it's not the focal point of her character, you know. And I think that we explore that through the Harley Quinn animated series, where she goes, she knows that she's not a piece of meat, and she behaves not like a piece of meat. With Birds of Prey, I think it was a little bit different because we get to see the more manic side of Harley. I really wanted to like Birds of Prey. I really wanted to watch Ian McGregor become this really big bad, where he was just kind of there. And I was like, hey, this General Kenobi, that's pretty sick. And then I forgot what I was watching. Because he didn't do anything, and they didn't do anything. And it was her talking about her relationship with the Joker and saying how much she missed the Joker, but she doesn't belong to the Joker. And I was like, wait a minute, what is the plot of this? I love the costume design. I will say that. I think that was a really fun look for her. But ultimately with this one, even where she's with the president and she shoots him and she goes on and on, you know, she really reflects on how she's been treated and how she has been perceived. And I thought that was a really breakthrough moment. This is what they've been trying to do with Birds of Prey. They took the 2 hours of Birds of Prey and they stuck it in a minute shot. Right. That really accumulated everything that this character development needed. And it was funny, you know, she made a comment, she was quirky about it, she was funny about it. But at the same time, that reality of her being like, I have been in these awful relationships and that does not define me, really kicks in. And then she goes on this incredible tirade. That is one of the coolest scenes in the film. And I think that there are some times where she's a little bit airheaded and a little bit naive, kind of not obnoxious. I go, oh, okay. You know, they need to remind the audience that this is Margot Robbie's here and she's Harley Quinn and she's going to make these airheaded comments. Oh, she's got the javelin. Oh, okay, she's got the javelin, you know. But other than that, I think that this was a really nice perception of this character that's been misconstrued through media since her conception. I don't know if I need to see Margot Robbie as Harley anytime soon. I do think she kind of ease on the brakes a little bit with this character and kind of step aside from this before it consumes her and her career. That being said, I do know that there is a Gotham City Sirens work in production, pre-production, still being discussed. So I think that would be really fun to see her in. I just think that this is kind of a really nice. It's the cherry on top that we've been missing for Harley. Right. And I think it's what's been trying to be achieved and hasn't been achieved, but has kind of been there's those inklings being, oh, that's a nice move for her. That's what we should see more of, and then it regresses. Right. There's a lot of regression, and that halfway, you're taking 2 steps forward to take 3 steps back, and you're back where you started. You know, she makes the comments about the werewolf or the hot president or whatever, you know, or Rick Flag coming to rescue her. But they're very innocent and they're very naive in a way, you know, and I think that having that childlike wonder after this history of mental illness and extortion and just poor treatment really shows how that deteriorates on her character without sexualizing her, without reminding us that she's it's like Captain Carter. You don't need to tell me that she's a woman. Let her behave how she wants to behave. And if that resonates with a young woman, let it resonate with a young woman. Because if that's how I've been in places where I look at female characters and I go, I like that. I can see myself in that. And I looked at characters such as Harley, and I go, I can see someone else really liking that, and I can see that really being meaningful for them, but not me. And they understand that that's going to resonate heavily with. I'm not saying take your kids to see this, but I'm saying or do. Gunn, don't. But I'm saying that there's a lot more of Harley Quinn that we haven't seen before, and it's really refreshing. It's so refreshing.
Yeah. It was refreshing, and you get the impression in this one, at least I did when watching her, that some of the ditziness that we get is actually a defense mechanism for her for what she's been through. Trying to hide that dark side she knows there that comes through when she escapes, because we see what full Harley is. I mean, she's on full heart. She's just got that rage when she walks down that hallway and just
she just no mercy. I mean, absolute no second thought.
And then we cut back to her going, "Oh, you guys were going to rescue me? Well, I could go back inside," and which is classic James Gunn timing of the dialogue, where she goes, "Where I could go back inside, you guys could rescue me," and then you've got Idris Elba. He goes, "Well, that was condescending," but he says it kind of quietly. But at the same time, you get that feeling like, "Oh, I've let go that dark side. Now I'm back to," and she overcompensates a bit, and we understand that more. I loved her in this one. I'm like, I wanted more of this in the other two films, because this is a character, I think, that you could explore those things with. We didn't quite get that with Birds of Prey. And I thought it was fun that she wasn't the damsel in distress that you thought maybe she was going to be. Which I think would have taken away from the character. And then, at the end, we get, her kind of dropping the line again of wanting to do good and looking. She's like, and he's like, "Well, no, you know what? We rescued this town for the day. That's enough world saving. We're not that good of people."
But they kind of are.
I admit, as the non-trailer watcher, I didn't know Starro was in this, so that was really cool.
Oh, nice!
Like, we're going there, huh? That was fun. And what a guy! But
even Starro, but Starro he's a character who's been around for a long time, and at the end, you find out that he was essentially kidnapped from space. His last line was, "I just really enjoyed, laying in space and looking at the stars." So again, you turn a classic comic book villain into a victim who's just lashing out. Maybe someone can explain to me. He was being held captive in this facility for 30 years.
How?
He gets out and he's crushing this town. Yes, what was keeping him there? Literally, was there a psychic dampener? Was there something going on with the Thinker? Because for a character named the Thinker, who's got these crazy devices hanging out of his head, they did nothing with Peter Capaldi. It's like, we've got Peter Capaldi as the Thinker. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Nothing. Isn't it cool? What was keeping Starro in that basement?
He was, for the most part. I mean, he even drops in there that he's the only one that was able to keep control.
How?
Well, little devices on his head. I don't know.
What did they
psychic? I mean,
yes. Again, it goes back to, it's a comic book movie. Who cares? That's Joel Schumacher thinking. I don't accept it.
That's not Joel Schumacher thinking. That's
Then explain to me, how did Starro stay locked in that basement?
Or even that scene where we just see all these other. Even that scene where we just see all these other bodies being.
How are you to snap the 2016 Thanos and still have everybody still there in the timeline the same? I mean, do we really want to travel down this rabbit hole of other?
Well, yeah, because you've got these gems that can control time, space, and reality itself.
No, but not the way they explain that. Away. It doesn't. If you cut off, and he puts the timeline back, and you cut off 2016 Thanos, then you don't get 2016.
Right, but here's the thing: we're talking about time and space and mystical gems, another universe. I'm talking about how do you keep a giant monster locked up in a tower?
I'm talking about wanting explanation for certain things in your comic book films. That you could go down a rabbit hole on every single comic book film and say, hey, well, what about this? Why didn't they do this? I mean, why didn't they explain this? At sometimes it's the comic book film. I'm not saying that it's exactly the right and that it's not lazy, but at the same time, we've gotten so many comic book films that I personally will not hold it against a comic book film for doing that if I was least entertained, which I was with Suicide Squad. There are warts to this movie. I will fully admit there are warts to this film, but at the end, I was entertained, just like Deadpool. I mean, if you want to get down to brass tacks, you look at Deadpool, there's a lot of repeating gimmicks in Deadpool.
Yeah, I didn't like Deadpool.
The entire character of Deadpool is just
and I get that you didn't like Deadpool, Ian, and that's fine. I'm just saying that
I like Deadpool too. I didn't like the first Deadpool.
But even
Ian, I am right there with you.
Even the beginning of Deadpool 2 was just like the beginning of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they had the X-Force, and they just, hilariously blew them up.
Blew them up. Yeah.
Which I was fine with. That brought in stakes. You didn't know if they were actually going to die or not, since they were the Suicide Squad.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I did have a little bit. I figured, Harley and maybe Elba's character, but I figured everybody else was going to die. It was like I was waiting for who was next going to ace, because at least James Gunn isn't. Granted, you have producers involved, but they gave him full creative control. He's not afraid of just killing a random main character at any point in time. You know what I'm saying in that respect. I guess what I'm just saying is the perspective. I get what you're saying, Ian, exactly. But for me, I don't criticize the film for that, only because you could use that for every, it's the same argument I didn't get into with someone online who said, well, I hated Justice League because there was too much CGI. And I went, well, how'd you feel about...
That's a different kind of argument, though.
No, but what I'm saying is that, but I went to him and go, well, did you hate Endgame because it had too much CGI? He goes, well, no, I've always been a Marvel fan. I mean, it's different tastes in what you're looking for in films, is just what I'm saying, is where we're coming from. I totally can see your perspective, but at the same time, for me, I guess I just... I knew what I was kind of getting into, especially when I saw the first trailer, and I was just like, okay. And I just let go and just watched it. And you can tell they gave Gunn creative control. I am with everybody. I don't need another one of these films. In all honesty, when I watched Deadpool, I was actually like, I don't necessarily need another Deadpool film. Now, granted, they wrote it in a way that I was like, okay, I'm glad you came up with this. At the same time, I've got this. I've got the Suicide Squad. This is my Gonzo, rated R, just balls to the wall, whatever Gunn wanted to do. This is all I want. I don't need any more of this because I have this. Take these characters that were left at the end of this film and shove them now into a more serious comic book film, so you can explore the exact elements you were looking for, Ian. I would love to see them take that, because you had the let loose part. Now we can explore them more. I would love to see a rat catcher film, personally. Well, not a solo film necessarily, but I'd like to see her character come up. Maybe
elsewhere. We already know that she's going to be back, because there's no way that this is going to be a one and done thing.
This one,
why would you just, what I mean? Why would you sign on and then be like, okay, goodbye forever, DC, and then do something else? Especially if your character is one of a handful that's remaining at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. Especially with that really, that vague end credit scene. Like you said earlier, it should have been a Peacemaker teaser. It should have been a Peacemaker promo. Where exactly is it going to take that next?
I don't know. I mean,
with DC, every movie has said they're trying to do the Marvel thing. I miss the days when The Dark Knight was good. The reason it was because it was its own thing, and I think DC should really embrace that. And when they're going, oh no, we're gonna have a Peacemaker TV series and all that, I'm just going, no, you're doing what got you in trouble in the first place. Stop doing that. Do more Jokers. Do more of this. Do more of that.
I may be the hashtag DC shill, but I will be the first and foremost to admit that don't. Just do your own thing, because we've established comic book films can make money. Do your own thing. You don't have to do the combined universe. That's what frustrated me when MCU did it. Not just DC. Freaking Universal, Dark Force, and I'm just sitting here going, man, Troma and Full Moon Productions were doing combined universes far before any of you guys. But Evil Bong, right, Ian?
Yes. which I would watch over and over again before the Suicide Squad. No, here's the thing. The whole thing with the Peacemaker setup, I thought they were just going to do like a movie or have him back for the next sequel, but a TV series, I really don't know. I don't get it. I don't get the whole John Cena thing in this film. Because it's an interesting idea, right? The kind of the Captain America who doesn't know that he's, doing wrong. He thinks he's doing right. In a real movie, I think you explore that, and you explore the dramatic as well as the comedic possibilities. In this, he just spends the entire film one-upping Idris Elba until all of a sudden he turns heel and we're supposed to take him seriously because he's bad. My big question at the end of this was, why was that tech team still alive? I understand that Amanda Waller got taken unawares, clocked in the back of the head, but the character that we meet in the beginning of this movie would have had all of those fuckers killed. And, by the end of the movie, she would have been, looking off into the control room. It would have been, you don't have to see the dead bodies, but you can see, it's an entirely new group of people in every position. And that's how you close that out. It's none of this, we're going to somehow go to the hospital and because Waller would have known that Peacemaker was, it's totally inconsistent. Again, this movie is little bits and vignettes and jokes and things that kind of slot in. You could, it's like trying to turn a book of knock-knock jokes into a novel. It just doesn't work. But, I'm glad everyone had a great time and you got what you wanted out of the film. We're just over an hour here, so I'm going to close it out.
That's my fault. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's good that we're getting it all.
Wear the hat.
Yeah, don't take off your DC hat. Don't you dare put on a Marvel hat.
I don't have a Marvel
America
hat.
Logo thing.
All right.
I didn't change. I'm sorry, guys.
I actually forgot you were wearing that for a second.
No, you're just wearing the Peacemaker shirt for the DC. Yes. No, all right. Well, thank you again, Earth's Mightiest Critics, for joining me on this contentious and lovely, argumentative, beautiful discussion about the Suicide Squad. Excuse me as I burp into the microphone. That's so rude. Anyway.
But it's fitting for the Suicide Squad.
that was more of a wet fart. Anyway, before I let everyone go, does there anybody have some brief final thoughts before we leave anything I don't want to leave anything unsaid?
I'll hammer home what I hammered home before. If they go a third movie, they can't repeat this formula again. Do a different arc of a different thing, not another pulled mission, and it like have Waller there, but you can't do the first 15 minutes getting to know you thing. Teamwork, random one mission. Branch a little. Involve like the mission can't be for a glowing thing. It's got go involve yourself with a hero. Go involve yourself with a villain. I'm actually advertising them to go ahead and connect to somebody bigger. Go get Superman involved. Go get something like lead higher than these little shitty missions.
Suicide Squad versus Shazam's family.
I would watch that.
If you will.
I would watch that.
I said Shazamily. If you will.
Shazamily. All about Shazamily.
I like that.
That's going to be on the poster for the next one.
I watched Shazam on my flight home, and I forgot how good a movie it is.
It's a great movie.
That movie.
See, and that's the thing is DC. I don't know why they don't get it. Shazam. Even I know some people feel quirky about it, but even the vein they took Aquaman in, the vein that they took the first Wonder Woman.
We're not watching Aquaman 2 unless Amber Heard is out of it.
Right.
Like legit. We're not watching Aquaman 2 unless Amber Heard is out of it.
Yeah. And I don't blame you, but it's funny to see those films hit, and it's like DC's producers seem to turn a blind eye. I'm like, I'll take more of that. Being a DC fan, quit trying to force the DCEU. Bring up these other characters. That's why I'm kind of excited about the Black Adam film. And I'm like, dig up these characters that you have. I'm the same way with Marvel. You have a huge decades of different characters you could pull from and explore that you could get away with and be more creative about because nobody knows about them. Nobody knows them, so you could do more with those characters. And that's what Marvel is doing now, and it'd be nice to see DC do that. So
David, you were going to say something?
Sorry,
I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I'm sorry.
I ruined it again. Ian's going to not have me on here anymore.
That is not going to happen. But no, I think another. It's weird because I didn't think about this until after I got home from the Suicide Squad, how closely it mirrors Ayer's version, down to they didn't have Skybeam, fortunately, but it was the team fighting against this giant threat that's destroying the city. But I was even thinking about the little starfish monsters taking over the citizens of the town. Again, it's wonderful to have the Suicide Squad cutting apart poor South American townspeople. That's great. But no, the black-berried head monsters from the first movie, that take over the soldiers, they're shooting them. I mean, it's like you took the first movie and said, what if we just pretended James Gunn was doing it all along, and then that's this movie, which it's fine. It's what people, I guess, want, or maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I remembered what I was going to say. I mean, I really think that the WB and DC just said, James Gunn, do whatever you want because you had such great success with the last two Guardians. Have at it. And maybe that's not always such a good thing because
that's Snyder that question, huh?
No, he's going to make a 4-hour cut about why that's going to happen. And then every time we see Gal Gadot, that operatic scene will kick in, and then you'll never get your answer.
And he'll brutally murder Superman and everyone else.
I remember something I was going to say. To me, the two most important parts of this movie and the things that showed the most potential were handled in dialogue, the backstory of the Polka Dot Man, and then that brief mention of Waller, I think, was the one who was saying why Savant was sent to Bel Rev or whatever. He was incarcerated for putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet.
No,
I was sitting there.
Bloodsport.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Blood. I get them all.
Yeah.
Don't say Bloodshot. That was the Vin Diesel thing. Don't.
I know.
Don't
I'm
say
sorry.
Oh my.
Stop it. We don't have.
No, Bloodshot. Bloodshot is.
That's my eyes after.
Bloodshot is in that same prison. It's a shared universe now. But no. Okay. But yeah.
God
Sorry.
awful and should not be continued ever.
So yeah, but Idris Elba's character, like his little backstory, I was sitting there watching a brief mini movie of what that would have looked like. Superman getting sent to the hospital. That's something we haven't seen before.
It's straight from the comics.
But it wasn't like, what was it, Superman Returns?
That's what I'm saying. Engage some bigger things next time, and you have those moments, which would be amazing.
Right.
Straight from the comic.
I'm like, oh, is that what we're in for in this movie? No, it's going to be Idris Elba screaming at his daughter for 2 minutes, and that's again what I was talking about. The tone. You open with this crazy beach scene, and everyone's getting blown up, and it's funny, and then it's sort of the Idris Elba problem. He's such a great dramatic actor that when he's in a scene where he's yelling, "F you" to his daughter repeatedly, I'm like, am I watching like a domestic abuse drama now? Is this supposed to be funny? Because they're both investing in it, like they're going to break down, crying. And he's not going to go on the mission. He's going to hang back and just like try and put his family back together. But yeah, okay. I've gone on long enough. I'm going to thank you once again. I'm going to close the curtain on the Suicide Squad. And with love to all. I've been, as always, Ian Simmons. I'm here with Don Shanahan of All Things. I'm here with Mike Crowley of 25YL, and you'll probably agree, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck from the Spoiler Room, Andy Banks from Chuckload of Comics, or Chuckload of Com, I see.
That one, yeah.
It's a little long. Yeah.
And David Fowley of Keeping It Real. So thank you all for hanging out, for going over, for staying up half the night with me. Well, it's half the night for me because I'm old. But we'll be back next week talking about the second episode of What If. You can check that out on the YouTube channel of Kicking the Seat. Check out all my lovely guests' work via the links below. And thank you. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And with that, I'm going to cut this off, not in a suicide way, but just kind of an ending the live stream. I'm going to end it.